The fluorescent lights above me hummed with that familiar buzz as I sat waiting in the lobby of the Nordstrom Institute for Advanced Research. My interview had been scheduled for 2 p.m., but old habits from nursing school had me arriving a full 20 minutes early. The receptionist, a man in his 40s who seemed thoroughly unimpressed by everything, barely glanced up when I signed in. I smoothed my skirt for what felt like the 100th time and mentally reviewed my prepared responses. This position wasn't exactly what I'd envisioned for my career path, but at $30 an hour for overnight reception duties, I couldn't afford to be selective. Not with Mom's medical expenses accumulating faster than I could process them. Ms. Zhao. A crisp voice interrupted my spiraling thoughts. I looked up to find a tall man in an impeccable suit. His posture was impossibly rigid, as if relaxation was a concept he'd never encountered. Mr. Marrow. I stood, extending my hand. Yes, follow me, please. He turned without accepting my handshake and proceeded toward a corridor marked Administrative Offices. His office matched his appearance perfectly, immaculate and precise. Not a single paper sat out of place, and I couldn't find a speck of dust anywhere. He motioned toward the chair across from his desk, and I settled in, placing my folder of references on my lap. Your application was adequate, he stated, folding his hands on the desktop. When he smiled, I nearly recoiled. His teeth were remarkably large, almost too numerous for his mouth. Previous healthcare experience, excellent attention to detail, no criminal record. Yes, The night receptionist position requires discretion and strict adherence to protocol, he continued, speaking over me as if I hadn't spoken at all. We conduct sensitive research here. Government contracts, proprietary technology. He paused, his unblinking eyes fixed on me. The position pays $30 per hour. 10-hour shifts, 4 nights per week, midnight to 10 a.m. I tried to mask how desperately I needed this opportunity. $30 an hour would bridge the gap in Mom's insurance coverage and perhaps even allow me to make progress on my nursing school loans from a program I'd been forced to abandon when her illness took center stage. That sounds perfect, I said, forcing what I hoped was a confident smile. Perfect is not what we require, Ms. Zhao. Perfect is unrealistic. We require competent. We require obedient. He opened a drawer and extracted a thick binder alongside a slim folder. This is the employment contract, he said, sliding the folder toward me. And this is the procedural handbook for night reception staff. I opened the handbook while he outlined the basic duties, manning the phones, monitoring security feeds, logging any unusual activity. The initial pages seemed standard enough until I encountered a section titled Mandatory Protocols. Do not accept deliveries after 11 p.m. If you receive a call from someone claiming to be your grandmother, hang up immediately. Never, under any circumstances, look directly at the security cameras. Do not open the front doors for anyone between midnight and 6 a.m. regardless of their identification. If the lights flicker more than 3 times in succession, move to the basement storage room and lock the door. I looked up. Is this a joke? Mr. Marrow's expression remained unchanged. The Nordstrom Institute's work is highly classified. These protocols exist for your safety and the integrity of our research. But my grandmother. All-night staff receive personalized instructions based on their particular vulnerabilities. His mouth stretched into something approximating a smile, but it never reached his eyes. Now, would you like a tour of your workspace? The reception area stood in stark contrast to the warm, bustling nurses' station I'd grown accustomed to during clinicals. A sleek desk with 3 monitors faced the glass front doors. To the right, a bank of security screens displayed various hallways and rooms throughout the building. A multi-line phone system sat beside a computer. This button, Mr. Marrow indicated a red button beneath the desk, connects directly to local emergency services. This one, he pointed to a blue button, alerts me personally. Use the red only in case of fire, severe injury, or police emergency. Use the blue for protocol violations. He showed me the key to the basement storage room, pointed out camera blind spots, areas he claimed were designed for privacy during restroom breaks, and explained the phone forwarding system for after-hours calls. Any questions, Ms. Zhao? I had approximately 100, but the one that escaped was, why can't I look at the security cameras? Some of our research involves light wavelengths that can cause neurological damage when viewed through digital mediums, he replied without hesitation. The cameras themselves are fine, but human eyes should not view them directly. Peripheral vision only. It didn't make sense, but neither did turning down $30 an hour. When can I start? I asked. Tonight, if you're available. Sign here. I signed. That night, sitting on my bed in the apartment I shared with Mom, I read through the entire rule book. Some rules contradicted basic safety protocols I'd learned in nursing school. Do not call for backup if you hear knocking from inside the supply closet. If the phone rings exactly 13 times, do not answer it, but place a circle of salt around your chair. Mom coughed in her sleep from the next room, and I closed the binder. The Nordstrom Institute was clearly eccentric, perhaps even run by paranoid government contractor types, but the money was real, and that was all that mattered. Still, as I set my alarm for 11 p.m., I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd agreed to something far stranger than a simple reception job. The image of Mr. Merrow's unnaturally large teeth kept recurring, the way he never seemed to blink. The bizarre rules that defied scientific logic. But what choice did I have? Mom's next round of treatment wasn't going to pay for itself. I let myself hope the rules were just some weird hazing ritual or corporate culture quirk. But as I set my alarm and laid out my clothes for the night shift, the memory of those rules and Mr. Merrow's unsettling teeth kept circling in my head. I tucked my badge into my pocket as I walked through the quiet building. My first few nights at the Nordstrom Institute had been exactly what $30 an hour should buy, boring. Nothing but silence, occasional footsteps from late working scientists, and the constant tick of the analog clock mounted above my reception desk. The handbook had made night shift sound like some horror movie setup, but the reality was mundane data entry and staring at security monitors for my peripheral vision. I'd even brought a novel on my third night after finishing all my assigned tasks by 2 a.m. Easiest money I've ever made, I muttered, settling into my chair for night 4. The scientists who worked late rarely acknowledged me beyond a brief nod on their way out. I'd grown accustomed to the hollow echo of my own footsteps during hourly walk-through checks of the lobby. Nothing ever happened here after midnight. By 1 a.m., I'd completed my routine security log, bathroom break, and monitor check. The building hummed with the steady drone of the ventilation system. I pulled out my book and settled in for another quiet night. At precisely 1:17 a.m., the phone rang. I jumped, nearly dropping my novel. Not a single call had come in during any of my previous shifts. The caller ID showed unknown. I picked up the receiver and recited the script I'd memorized from the handbook, Nordstrom Institute Night Reception. This is Emily Zhao speaking. How may I assist you? Silence stretched for 3 seconds. Then, Xiao Mei, is that you? I froze. No one called me that except my grandmother. Nai. I whispered, forgetting protocol entirely. A soft chuckle came through the line. Of course it's me. Who else calls you Xiao Mei? It was her voice. Exactly her voice. My grandmother had died 5 years ago from a stroke, but this was unmistakably her. The slight accent, the warmth, the way she emphasized the second syllable of my nickname. This isn't possible, I said, my hands shaking. You're not real. Yeah, such nonsense, she replied, scolding me just like she used to. Have you been eating properly? You sound tired. Coldness spread from my chest as I remembered the handbook rule. If you receive a call from someone claiming to be your grandmother, hang up immediately. But how could they have known it would be my grandmother? And how could whatever this was know exactly how she sounded? I miss you, I said, unable to help myself. But you're gone. You died. Dead? Who told you such a terrible thing? I've been away. Yes, very far away, but I'm trying to come back to you. Her voice softened. I need your help, Xiao Mei. My training, both as an almost nurse and as a night receptionist, screamed at me to hang up. But 5 years of grief kept my hand frozen on the receiver. Your mother's jade pendant, the voice continued. The one you wear. I gave it to you on your 16th birthday. You dropped it in the kitchen and chipped the corner. You cried, but I told you it was good luck because perfect things attract jealousy from spirits. My free hand flew to my neck where the pendant hung hidden beneath my blouse. The chip was there, exactly as she'd described. No one else knew that story. What do you want? I asked, my voice barely audible. I left something for you in the basement supply room. A package. It will help me find my way back to you. The basement supply room. The same one Mr. Marrow had shown me, where I was supposed to go if the lights flickered. I can't, I said, my brief compliance wrestling with renewed suspicion. I'm not allowed to leave the desk. Since when do you follow rules so strictly? The voice laughed, and it was Nai-Nai's laugh, with that little snort at the end that always made me smile. You were such a rebellious child. Remember when you cut your own bangs before New Year photos? Your mother was so angry, but I thought you looked cute. Another private memory. How was this possible? The package. Xiaomei, please. I've been trying to reach you for so long. Just go check. 5th shelf on the left behind the paper towels. My eyes darted to the security monitors. The hallways were empty. No one would know if I went quickly to the basement and back. Something clicked in my brain. The rules. The strange, specific rules that had seemed so bizarre when I first read them. If you receive a call from someone claiming to be your grandmother, hang up immediately. I swallowed hard. I have to go now. Wait, the voice changed subtly, a note of urgency creeping in. Xiaomei, please. I just need. Goodbye, I said, and hung up. My hand trembled as I released the phone. I sat motionless at my desk, staring at nothing for what must have been 20 minutes. The voice had been perfect. Every inflection, every term of endearment, and those memories, details no one else could possibly know. The rest of the night crawled by. I found myself jumping at every noise, checking the basement door repeatedly to make sure it remained closed. When 10 a.m. finally arrived, I nearly ran to Mr. Marrow's office. He was at his desk reviewing documents with the same mechanical precision I'd noticed during my interview. He didn't look up when I knocked on his open door. Mr. Marrow, I need to report an incident from last night. His hand paused mid-page turn. What sort of incident? I received a phone call at 1:17 a.m. from someone claiming to be my grandmother. He set down his papers and finally looked at me. And what did you do? I spoke to her longer than I should have. She knew things only my grandmother would know. But I remembered the rule and hung up eventually. Did this caller ask you to do anything? His voice remained measured, but I noticed his fingers had tightened on the edge of his desk. Yes. She wanted me to check the basement supply room for a package she supposedly left for me. Mr. Marrow stood abruptly. Did you go? No, I stayed at my desk. His shoulders relaxed slightly. Good. That's good, Ms. Zhao. He walked to his office door and closed it, then returned to his seat, gesturing for me to take the chair opposite him. The rules in your handbook are not arbitrary, Ms. Zhao. They exist for your protection. Protection from what exactly? I asked. How did something know about my grandmother? About private memories we shared. Mr. Marrow adjusted his tie. The Nordstrom Institute researches phenomena that exist beyond conventional scientific understanding. Our work occasionally attracts attention from entities that do not belong in our reality. Entities, I repeated, my stomach turning. What kind of entities? The kind that learn quickly and adapt to access points of emotional vulnerability. He leaned forward. Tell me, if you had gone to that supply room last night, what do you think you would have found? I shook my head. I don't know. Nothing, probably. Or something wearing the appearance of your grandmother, perhaps. His mouth twitched in what might have been an attempt at sympathy. These entities seek entry points. They study us, learn our weaknesses. That's why the rules exist. So the handbook rules, they're based on previous incidents. Things that have happened to other night receptionists. Yes. Each rule corresponds to a documented encounter. He straightened a pen on his desk. Ms. Zhao, breaking protocol puts not only yourself at risk, but potentially everyone in this facility. I thought about the voice on the phone. So perfect, so familiar, yet asking me to break the rules. I understand. I hope you do. For now, we will increase security measures during your shifts. He stood, signaling the end of our conversation. And Ms. Zhao, if anything else unusual occurs, any sound, any call, any visual anomaly, report it immediately using the blue button. That night, when I arrived for my 5th shift, I noticed the changes right away. New security cameras had been installed, their black lenses pointed directly at my desk. Not at the entrance, not at the hallways, but at me. I sat down at my station, feeling the weight of unseen eyes. Somehow, the new cameras made me feel less safe, not more. As I logged into the system, I couldn't shake the memory of my grandmother's voice, so real and alive. Whatever Mr. Marrow said, whatever strange research they conducted here, nothing explained how something could replicate her so perfectly, down to memories only she and I had shared. I glanced up at the cameras watching me and wondered, what exactly was I being protected from? Or what was I being watched for? The red digital numbers of the clock flicked to 2:30 a.m. on my 5th night at the Nordstrom Institute. Rain pattered against the glass entrance doors, creating rivulets that distorted the view of the empty parking lot outside. I adjusted my position in the chair, trying to ignore the cameras Mr. Marrow had installed after my report about the phone call. Their lenses pointed directly at me rather than at the entrances they were supposedly protecting. My routine checks had been completed an hour ago, and the building had settled into that particular silence that exists only in the dead of night. Not truly quiet, but filled with the soft murmurs of ventilation systems and the occasional ping of metal expanding or contracting somewhere in the walls. The handbook sat open on my desk, its pages illuminated by the harsh glow of my computer monitors. A sharp knock cut through the ambient noise, startling me so badly I knocked over my water bottle. I scrambled to right it before it spilled across my desk, then looked toward the source of the sound. A woman stood outside the glass entrance doors. She wore a lab coat over business attire. Her blonde hair, darkened by rain, was plastered against her head. Water dripped from her sleeves as she raised her hand to knock again, more insistently this time. I felt a jolt of panic as I recalled the explicit rule, do not open the front doors for anyone between midnight and 6 a.m., regardless of their identification. The woman pressed her face closer to the glass, cupping her hands around her eyes to see through the glare of the lobby lights reflecting on the wet surface. When she spotted me, relief washed over her features. She waved frantically. I rose from my chair but maintained my distance from the doors. The woman fished something from her lab coat pocket and held it up against the glass, an ID badge. From where I stood, the photo matched her face, though the rain-blurred plastic made the details difficult to discern. The name read, Dr. Suzanne Lang. I recognized the name. During my orientation, I'd scrolled through the employee directory while waiting for Mr. Marrow. Dr. Lang was listed as a senior researcher in biological systems. This woman matched the directory photo perfectly. She knocked again and mouthed words I couldn't hear through the thick glass, pointing to the door lock, then miming a key turning. She was locked out. I approached the intercom panel beside the door. Protocol didn't forbid communication, only opening the doors. I'm sorry, but I can't let anyone in between midnight and 6 a.m., I said through the speaker. Those are the rules. Dr. Lang's face registered confusion, then frustration. She pressed the exterior intercom button. Emily, right? I'm Dr. Lang. I just stepped out to get something from my car and the door locked behind me. Her voice came through with electronic crackles. My key card must have demagnetized in the rain. Please, I'm soaked. She did look miserable, water dripping from her chin, her thin lab coat offering little protection from the downpour. I really can't, I said. Mr. Marrow was very specific about not opening the doors for anyone during night hours. "This is ridiculous," she said, running a hand through her wet hair. "I've been working here for 5 years. Call Marrow if you have to, but I need to get back to Lab 3. I'm in the middle of time-sensitive cultures that can't wait until morning." That made sense. Why would a senior researcher leave in the middle of the night if she was working on something important? And if she was just getting something from her car, she wouldn't have taken her keys. Her explanation fit perfectly. But the rule in the handbook was absolute. And after my experience with the phone call 2 nights ago, that perfect recreation of my grandmother's voice, I wasn't taking any chances. "I'll call Mr. Marrow for you," I offered, reaching for the desk phone. Dr. Lang pressed her palms against the glass, desperation etching lines around her eyes. "There's no time. My cultures will be ruined if I don't get back to them in the next 10 minutes. Emily, please use your common sense." A flash of anger crossed her face as I hesitated, my hand on the phone. "Are you seriously going to let months of research be destroyed because of some stupid rule?" Water streamed from her clothes, pooling around her feet on the exterior landing. Lightning flashed somewhere in the distance, briefly illuminating the parking lot behind her. For an instant, I thought I saw something strange about her shadow, too tall, too angular. But the impression vanished as quickly as it had appeared. "I'm calling Mr. Marrow," I repeated, picking up the receiver. My finger hovered over the blue button under my desk, the one for protocol violations. Dr. Lang's expression changed again. The anger drained away, replaced by something else, a complete absence of emotion. She straightened up, no longer shivering or showing any discomfort from the rain still pelting her. "You should let me in, Emily Zhao," she said, her voice eerily calm through the intercom. "It would be better for everyone if you just opened the door now." My skin crawled. How did she know my last name? I hadn't introduced myself fully through the intercom. As I watched, her pupils grew larger and larger until they filled her eyes completely. They turned totally black, like looking into empty space. I pressed the blue button. The phone rang once before Mr. Marrow answered, his voice crisp despite the late hour. "What protocol violation are you reporting?" "There's someone outside," I whispered, unable to look away from the woman, or whatever it was, staring at me through the glass. "She says she's Dr. Lang, but her eyes, something's wrong with her eyes." "Do not open the doors. Go to the basement storage room immediately. Lock yourself inside." "I'm on my way." The line went dead. The thing that looked like Dr. Lang just stood there on the other side of the glass, its black eyes staring at me. Water kept running down its face, but it didn't blink or seem bothered by it at all. I backed away from the desk, keeping my eyes on the thing as I headed for the hallway to the basement stairs. My security badge shook in my hand as I swiped it at the stairwell door. The lights in the stairwell kept blinking as I went down, each step getting me further from the safety of the reception area. I tried not to think about the rule about blinking lights. 3 times in a row, the handbook had said. These blinks were just random, probably the old building dealing with the storm. The basement hallway was dark, with emergency bulbs that barely lit anything up. The storage room door was at the end, a big metal slab with a heavy-duty lock. I struggled with the key Mr. Marrow had shown me during my first day, finally getting it into the lock with my shaky hands. Inside, the storage room was totally dark. I felt around the wall until I found the light switch. One bulb lit up shelves full of office stuff, cleaning supplies, and file boxes. The place smelled like dust and cleaning products. I pulled the door closed behind me and turned the deadbolt, ensuring it was locked tight. Only then did I let myself breathe. The room didn't have any windows or other ways in besides the door. I was probably as safe as I could get, if whatever was upstairs couldn't break through metal. My phone couldn't get a signal in the basement. Mr. Marrow had mentioned that during my first day. I was totally cut off until he got here. Time crawled by in silence. I sat on some stacked copy paper boxes, trying to figure out what I'd just seen. The woman looked exactly like Dr. Lang. Even had the small scar on her chin that was in the directory photo. How was that possible? And those eyes. Nobody has eyes like that. A soft scratching noise broke the silence. I froze, listening carefully. The sound happened again, louder this time, something dragging against the metal door. "Ms. Zhao," a voice called softly. "Emily, are you in there?" It wasn't Mr. Marrow's voice. It wasn't Dr. Lang's either. It was my grandmother's. "Xiaomei, why are you hiding? Let me in. I've missed you so much." The perfect recreation of Nai Nai's voice made my chest tighten. Every cadence, every slight accent on certain syllables. It was flawless. "You're not my grandmother," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite my racing heart. "My grandmother is dead." "I found a way back to you," the voice insisted. "But you have to open the door. Please, Xiaomei. I'm so cold out here." The scratching intensified, like fingernails dragging across the metal surface. Then it stopped abruptly. "You're making a mistake," the voice said, dropping all pretense of warmth. Something heavy slammed against the door, making me jump. "Open the door." The impact came again, the door shaking in its frame. I backed away until I hit the shelving units, knocking a box of paper clips to the floor. The pounding continued for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Between hits, I heard whispers in different voices. Sometimes my grandmother, sometimes Dr. Lang, sometimes voices I didn't know at all. Then, just like that, the noises stopped. I stood frozen in the quiet room, trying to hear any sound from the hallway. Nothing. It was so quiet I started wondering if I'd made the whole thing up, maybe stress and no sleep were making me see things. Then footsteps came from the corridor, slow and deliberate. A key turned in the lock. I grabbed a heavy stapler from a nearby shelf, the only thing I could use as a weapon. The door swung open, revealing Mr. Marrow. His suit was perfectly neat as usual, like he hadn't just thrown it on in the middle of the night. The only sign he'd hurried was the slight redness in his usually pale face. "Ms. Zhao," he said, eyes sweeping the room. "Are you injured?" I lowered the stapler. No, I'm fine." "What was that thing? Is it gone?" He nodded once. "That thing's taken care of. We're safe now." Entity. The word seemed inadequate for what I'd seen. It looked exactly like Dr. Lang. "Not exactly," Mr. Marrow replied, adjusting his cuffs. "If you had looked more closely, you would have noticed discrepancies. These entities can approximate human appearance but lack certain subtleties." Its eyes turned completely black, I said. "Yes. That happens when they can no longer maintain the facade. Your refusal to allow entry, despite its attempts at manipulation, triggered that response." I stepped out of the storage room, eager to leave the cramped space. The basement corridor was empty, no sign of whatever had been scratching at my door minutes earlier. "What about the voices?" I asked as we walked toward the stairs. It spoke with my grandmother's voice, the same as the phone call the other night. Mr. Marrow stopped at the bottom of the stairs. "These things get into your memories and emotions. They trick you by sounding like people you know, just to get you to break the rules." "But how do they know?" "That is precisely what our research at the Institute aims to understand," he interrupted. "The specific mechanisms by which these intrusions occur." As we climbed the stairs, a thought struck me. Dr. Lang, the real Dr. Lang, is she okay? Dr. Lang is currently at a conference in Geneva. She's been there for the past week. Mr. Marrow's face remained expressionless. The entity chose her identity because she has the necessary clearance to access all areas of the facility. We reached the reception area. The rain had stopped, and through the entrance doors, I could see the parking lot was empty. No sign of the woman, the entity, that had stood there earlier. "You performed admirably tonight, Ms. Zhao," Mr. Marrow said, stopping at my desk. Few night receptionists have demonstrated such adherence to protocol during their first encounter. The casual implication that these encounters were expected made my skin crawl. "First encounter? You mean this will happen again?" The protocols exist for a reason, he replied, neither confirming nor denying. Continue to follow them, and you will remain safe. He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew an envelope. For tonight's inconvenience, a bonus, as specified in your contract. I took the envelope automatically. Inside was a check for $500. The remainder of your shift has been cancelled, he continued. You may go home. Return tomorrow night at the usual time. As he turned to leave, I found my voice again. Mr. Marrow, what exactly does the Nordstrom Institute research? He paused, his back to me. Reality, Ms. Zhao. The places where it thins. Without saying more, he walked away, his steps fading in the empty lobby. I grabbed my stuff with shaking hands. The check felt heavy in my pocket, payment for surviving something I still didn't understand. On my way out, I stopped at the entrance doors, looking at the spot where the entity had stood. A small puddle of water remained on the exterior landing, the only evidence that anything had been there at all. 2 nights passed since my encounter with the thing that had worn Dr. Lang's face like an ill-fitting mask. I tried to convince myself it had been a stress-induced hallucination, a combination of late hours, poor sleep, and an overactive imagination. But the check for $500 that Mr. Marrow had handed me was very real, now deposited in my account to help cover Mom's next round of treatments. I pulled into the Institute's parking lot just before midnight, clutching my travel mug of coffee tighter than necessary. The building stood before me, windows dark except for the soft glow of the lobby where I'd be spending the next 10 hours. The moment I stepped inside, I noticed changes. A small red button had been installed under the lip of my desk, positioned for easy access. A note in Mr. Marrow's precise handwriting sat beside my keyboard, emergency panic button. Press for immediate response. New protocol addendums in handbook section 7. I found the handbook where I'd left it in a drawer. Several pages had been added, held in place with binder clips. The first page contained a notice of my salary increase to $40 per hour, effective immediately. The rest detailed new procedures, most alarmingly, what to do if I ever encountered temporal duplications within the facility. In case of encountering what appears to be facility personnel in locations where they are not scheduled to be, do not approach or engage. Press emergency button and proceed to nearest supply closet until assistance arrives. Temporal duplications. The clinical phrasing made it sound like a minor inconvenience, like a printer jam or a power outage, but the explicit instructions to hide in a supply closet told me this was anything but routine. The first half of my night duty passed without incident. I conducted my hourly walkthrough checks, recorded the temperature readings from each wing as the new protocols required, and even managed to read a few chapters of my novel during the long stretches of silence. At 3:12 a.m., a flicker of movement caught my eye. One of the security monitors, camera 4, showed activity. Something was moving in the reception area. My reception area. I looked up from the monitor, confirming I was alone in the lobby. The front doors remained closed, the chairs empty, the potted plants still. Yet on the screen, camera 4 clearly showed the reception area from behind my chair, and it showed me sitting at my desk. My handbook rule flashed in my mind, never look directly at the security cameras. But I was already looking, unable to tear my eyes away from the impossibility on the screen. The Emily on the monitor wasn't doing what I was doing. While I sat frozen in horror, it, moved with strange, jerky motions, head tilting at an angle that made my neck hurt just watching. It shuffled papers on the desk, picked up the phone without dialing, set it down again. Then it stood slowly, mechanically, as if unfamiliar with how joints and muscles work together. It turned toward the camera. It smiled. The smile stretched too wide, revealing too many teeth, arranged in a way that human teeth simply don't grow. The eyes bulged slightly, unblinking. And then, still smiling at the camera, at me, my doppelganger walked to the front doors, pushed them open without using a key card, and walked out into the night. The monitor showed the empty desk for nearly a full minute before returning to its normal cycle of different areas in the building. The phone rang, slicing through the silence. I jumped, knocking my knee against the underside of the desk. The caller ID displayed Marrow, Hello. Ms. Zhao. Mr. Marrow's voice was tight. Why have you left your post? I didn't. I'm at my desk right now. A pause. Our security system indicates the front doors were opened from the inside 3 minutes ago. The motion sensors show movement heading toward the parking lot. My mouth went dry. Mr. Marrow, I've been sitting here the whole time. But I saw myself on camera 4. It looked like me, but it wasn't me. It left through the front doors. Another longer pause. You looked directly at camera 4, of all the things to focus on. Yes, I saw movement, Anne. We have an emergency signal from Lab 7B. He cut me off. Dr. Knox has triggered his panic button. Go check on him immediately. But the thing that looked like me is no longer in the building. Dr. Knox may be in danger. Go now, Ms. Zhao. Use the stairwell at the end of the east corridor. The line went dead before I could protest. I hesitated only briefly before grabbing my key card and hurrying down the east corridor. Whatever had walked out of the building looking like me was gone, but Dr. Knox needed help now. The stairwell led to a floor I hadn't visited during my orientation. Unlike the polished, minimalist aesthetic of the lobby and main research areas, this level had exposed pipes running along the ceiling and bare concrete floors. Signs with lab designations were stenciled directly onto the walls. Lab 7B was at the end of the hall, its door slightly ajar. A red light above the frame blinked steadily, the emergency signal. Dr. Knox. I called, pushing the door open wider. It's Emily Zhao from reception. Mr. Marrow sent me to check on you. The lab was a maze of equipment I couldn't identify. Tall machines with blinking lights, tables covered with papers and tablets and screens displaying incomprehensible data. The air smelled like ozone and something metallic. Dr. Knox. A shuffling sound came from behind a large server rack. I moved cautiously around it. A man in a lab coat was pressed against the wall, his glasses askew, his face pale with terror. Dark blood stained the front of his white coat. You're hurt, I said, stepping toward him. Let me help. Stay back, he screamed, pressing himself harder against the wall as if trying to pass through it. You're not real. You can't be real. I watched you die. I stopped, hands raised to show I meant no harm. Dr. Knox, I'm Emily from reception. Mr. Marrow asked me to check on you. You hit your panic button. He shook his head violently. No. You walked in here 20 minutes ago. You spoke to me. Then your face, he clutched at his own face, smearing blood across his cheek. And then you were just gone. But the door never opened. You never left. Blood began to trickle from his nose as he spoke, joining the stains on his coat. Dr. Knox, you need medical help. You're bleeding. He blinked rapidly, confusion replacing fear. He touched his face, looking with surprise at the blood on his fingertips. I feel strange. His words slurred slightly. Before I could reach him, he slid down the wall to the floor. More blood appeared, seeping from his ears. Dr. Knox. I rushed to him, checking for a pulse. It was there, but weak and irregular. I reached for my phone to call for help but realized I'd left it at my desk in my hurry. The lab had no phone I could see. The emergency button on the wall seemed my only option. I slammed my palm against it, and an alarm immediately began to wail throughout the building. I returned to Dr. Knox, trying to remember my emergency medical training from nursing school. I loosened his collar, checked his airway, and put him in the recovery position. But the blood continued to flow from his nose and ears, and his breathing grew more labored by the second. Hold on, I told him, though I wasn't sure he could hear me. Help is coming. His eyes fluttered open one last time. He looked at me with sudden clarity and whispered, "It's in the walls," before his body went limp. Mr. Marrow and 2 security guards I'd never seen before burst into the lab minutes later. They pulled me away from Dr. Knox while a medical team that had materialized from nowhere worked on him. What happened here? Mr. Marrow demanded, his normally impassive face showing actual emotion, anger, or perhaps fear. I don't know. I found him like this. He was terrified of me, said he'd seen me before, thought I wasn't real. The words tumbled out. He was bleeding, and then he just collapsed. Mr. Marrow studied my face intently. Did you touch anything in this lab? Any of the equipment? No, I went straight to Dr. Knox when I found him. One of the medical team approached us, his expression grim. He's gone, sir. Cerebral hemorrhage, massive and sudden. Mr. Marrow's jaw tightened. Secure the lab. Full containment protocol. He gripped my arm and steered me toward the door. Ms. Zhao, come with me. In a small security office near the lobby, Mr. Marrow sat me down in front of multiple screens showing footage from Lab 7B. He rewound to an hour before I'd arrived. Dr. Knox worked alone, moving between equipment, taking notes, occasionally speaking into a recording device. Nothing unusual. Then at 2:52 a.m., he suddenly looked up toward the door. His expression changed to one of surprise, then welcome. He spoke to someone off camera. The footage had no audio, but his body language suggested normal conversation. Who is he talking to? I asked. I don't see anyone else. Mr. Marrow fast-forwarded slightly. Dr. Knox's behavior changed abruptly. He backed away from the invisible visitor, looking terrified. He reached for the panic button on the wall but never made it. Instead, he clutched his head, stumbled, and collapsed partially out of frame. At 3:15 a.m., the lab door opened again, and I walked in. The real me, responding to Mr. Marrow's call. There's no one else, I whispered. No one entered before me. No, Mr. Marrow agreed, his voice flat. The security logs confirm no one accessed Lab 7B between Dr. Knox's arrival at midnight and your entry at 3:15 a.m. I stared at him. That's impossible. He was talking to someone. He was terrified of someone. Of you. His last words indicated he believed he was seeing you. A chill spread through me. But I wasn't there. I was at my desk until you called. Mr. Marrow replayed the footage of the front doors opening at 3:12 a.m., seemingly on their own. Something left the building wearing your appearance, Ms. Zhao, and something visited Dr. Knox wearing your appearance. Yet you were allegedly at your desk the entire time. We stared at each other, both of us too unsettled to speak. You think I'm lying? I asked, anger cutting through my fear. Check the reception desk camera. I did, he said simply. It shows you at your desk, looking directly at camera 4 despite explicit instructions never to do so, then becoming agitated. It does not show you leaving. Because I didn't leave. I saw something that looked like me leave on the monitor. Mr. Marrow closed the video files and turned to face me fully. In the 3 years of the Nordstrom Institute's operation, we have documented 17 instances of temporal duplications. In 15 of those cases, the staff member in question had no memory of being in 2 places at once. In the remaining 2, he trailed off. What happened in the remaining 2? I demanded. The staff members were not who they appeared to be. His eyes, cold and assessing, never left my face. Tell me, do you feel any different since you arrived tonight? Any gaps in your memory? Any moments of discontinuity? No. But even as I denied it, a seed of doubt took root. Could I trust my own perception after what I'd seen on that monitor? After what happened to Dr. Knox? Mr. Marrow seemed to read my thoughts. You'll undergo a full biometric scan before leaving today. Until then, you'll remain under observation. Am I a prisoner now? You're a potential security breach, Ms. Zhao. He stood, straightening his already perfect suit. But also our best witness to whatever killed Dr. Knox. So, you will finish your night duty under guard, and we will review all footage again in the morning. As he left me alone in the security office with a stone-faced guard by the door, one thought kept circling in my mind. The thing I saw on the monitor had my face, my clothes, my body, but it wasn't me. The guard outside the security office door refused to meet my eyes. I sat stiffly in the uncomfortable chair, replaying the footage of Dr. Knox collapsing over and over in my mind. 3 hours passed before Mr. Marrow returned. "You're dismissed for the night, Ms. Zhao," he said, his face betraying no emotion. "We'll contact you regarding your next shift." That's it. I stood up, my limbs stiff from sitting so long. "A man died, and you're just sending me home." Dr. Knox's death requires a thorough investigation. The Institute will temporarily suspend operations. He held the door open, clearly expecting me to leave without further questions. The security guard escorted me to my car. As I drove home through the pre-dawn darkness, my hands trembled on the steering wheel. Something wearing my face had walked out of the building. Something wearing my face had visited Dr. Knox before he died. And now a man was dead. Mom was still asleep when I got home. I left a note saying I'd taken extra shifts and needed to sleep during the day. Then I locked my bedroom door, drew the blinds, and lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd ever feel normal again. 2 days later, a text message arrived from an unknown number. Nordstrom Institute closed for internal review until further notice. Full compensation for scheduled shifts will be provided. For 5 days, I attempted to return to normal life. I spent time with Mom, took her to a doctor's appointment, caught up on household chores. But my mind kept returning to the Institute, to Dr. Knox's blood-streaked face, to his final whispered words, "It's in the walls." On the 6th day, another text arrived, "Operations resumed tomorrow night. Regular schedule. Increased compensation package pending discussion." That evening, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, studying my reflection. Was I really me, or was I something else wearing my face? The thought made me nauseous. "You okay, May?" Mom called from the living room. "You've been in there 20 minutes. "I'm fine," I replied automatically. "Just tired." When I arrived at the Institute the next evening, the difference was immediately obvious. 2 armed security guards flanked the entrance, checking my ID with far more scrutiny than the bored daytime receptionist ever had. Inside, more guards patrolled the hallways, their holstered weapons visible on their hips. Mr. Marrow waited at my desk, a new handbook placed precisely in the center. "Ms. Zhao," he greeted me, his posture as rigid as ever. "Before we discuss your continued employment, I need to verify your identity." He produced a small device resembling a thermometer. "Open your mouth, please." "What is that?" I asked, taking a step back. "A molecular resonance scanner. It will confirm you are who you appear to be." I hesitated, then complied. The device beeped after a few seconds. "Satisfactory," Mr. Marrow said, tucking it away. "Now, about your position." The events of last week were unfortunate but not unexpected. The Nordstrom Institute's work occasionally presents unique hazards. "A man died," I said flatly. "Yes. Dr. Knox was a valued colleague whose loss affects us deeply." His tone suggested exactly the opposite. "However, our research must continue. We've implemented additional security measures, as you've noticed." He gestured to the new handbook. "Your protocols have been updated. Please review them thoroughly before midnight. And if I decide not to come back." Mr. Marrow adjusted his cuffs, a gesture I'd come to recognize as his version of discomfort. "That would be unfortunate. Your performance has been exemplary, particularly your adherence to protocol during crisis situations. Few candidates possess such compatibility with our requirements." The way he emphasized compatibility sent a chill through me. "We're prepared to increase your compensation to $50 per hour with a completion bonus of $5,000 if you finish your 1-month contract." The amount made me blink. $50 an hour plus a bonus would cover Mom's treatments for 6 months. That kind of financial breathing room was impossible to walk away from. "Fine," I said. "I'll stay." "Excellent." Mr. Marrow checked his watch. "I'll personally inspect the facility before departing. The security team will remain on site until 11:30 p.m. As he walked away, I opened the new handbook. The original rules remained, but additional protocols had been added, neatly printed on colored paper for easy reference. One in particular caught my attention. If infant crying is heard from anywhere within the facility between midnight and 5 a.m., immediately create a circle of salt around your workspace and remain within the boundary until dawn or authorized personnel arrive. Do not investigate the sound regardless of its persistence or apparent urgency. I flipped through the rest of the handbook, finding more bizarre instructions. Protocols for if the water in the bathroom ran backward. What to do if all the clocks showed different times. How to respond if the phone rang with my own number as the caller ID. By the time I finished reading, the security team was preparing to leave. Mr. Merrow returned from his inspection, nodding curtly in my direction. All clear. The facility is secure. Remember your protocols. The lobby fell silent after he left. I sat at my desk, trying to focus on my regular duties instead of the memory of Dr. Knox's blood-streaked face or the doppelganger that had worn my appearance. At precisely midnight, the phone rang once, then stopped. I checked the caller ID, blank. Just as I settled back in my chair, I heard it. A baby crying. The sound was distant but unmistakable, the high-pitched wail of an infant in distress. It seemed to come from the East Wing. My first instinct was to investigate. What was a baby doing in a research facility at midnight? But the handbook's warning flashed in my mind. I yanked open my desk drawer where Mr. Merrow had placed a large container of salt during my first shift. With shaking hands, I created a circle around my desk and chair, ensuring the line was unbroken. The crying grew louder, more insistent. It now seemed to come from multiple directions at once, the east wing, the stairwell, the hallway leading to the bathrooms. Impossible, unless there were multiple babies, or unless whatever was making the sound could project its voice. I remembered Dr. Knox's words again, it's in the walls. A shiver ran down my back as I double-checked the salt circle. For 20 minutes, the crying continued, rising and falling in intensity. Then it stopped abruptly, leaving a silence that felt even more threatening. A soft scratching sound drew my attention to the ceiling vent above the water cooler. The metal grate covering the duct moved slightly, then more forcefully. It popped free, clattering to the floor. A small, pale hand with too many joints emerged from the darkness of the vent, gripping the edge. Another hand followed, then a head that resembled a human infant's but was wrong in ways that made my stomach turn. Its skin was nearly translucent, blue veins visible beneath. Its eyes were too large, too black, with no white at all. Thin, membranous wings unfurled from its back as it wiggled free of the vent and dropped to the floor with unnatural grace. Then it opened its mouth. The jaw extended far wider than any human mouth could, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. The sound that emerged was a perfect imitation of a baby's cry, sweet, plaintive, designed to trigger every human instinct to help and protect. I pressed back against my chair as the creature scuttled forward on all fours, moving with a jerky, insect-like motion. It stopped at the edge of the salt circle, cocking its head as if puzzled by this barrier it couldn't see. It reached a hand toward the line, then pulled back sharply, as if burned. A high, keening wail escaped its throat, no longer imitating a human infant, but something else entirely. A sound that made the windows vibrate. More scratching sounds came from other vents around the lobby. 2 more creatures emerged, identical to the first, their wings catching the fluorescent light as they dropped to the floor. I sat frozen, hardly daring to breathe, as they circled my salt boundary, occasionally testing it with a finger or toe, always recoiling. One creature found the gap in the circle where I'd accidentally scuffed the salt with my shoe. It pushed a finger through, its black eyes fixed on me with terrible intelligence. I lunged for the salt container, pouring more to repair the line. The creature hissed, withdrawing its hand. For the next 7 hours, I remained absolutely still within my salt circle while the creatures prowled around it. They tried everything, crying in human voices, mimicking my mother's call, even speaking my name in a child's voice, "Emily, help me, Emily." I covered my ears but kept my eyes on them, watching for any break in the salt line. Minutes stretched into hours. My legs cramped. My mouth dried out. But I didn't move from my chair, didn't reach for my water bottle that had rolled just outside the circle. As dawn approached, the creatures became agitated, their movements more frantic. They clawed at the floor, the chairs, anything they could reach. The first rays of sunlight came through the lobby windows. The creatures shrieked, their translucent skin beginning to smoke where the light touched it. The lobby doors opened. Mr. Marrow entered, carrying what looked like a modified flashlight. He pointed it at the nearest creature and pressed a button. A beam of bright white light shot out, covering the creature. It shook violently, seeming to collapse into itself until it vanished with a pop of displaced air. He took care of the other two just as quickly, then checked his device and looked around the lobby carefully before approaching my circle. "You may step out now, Ms. Zhao. The entities have been neutralized." My legs nearly buckled as I stood. What were those things? Mr. Marrow pocketed his device. The same entity that visited Dr. Knox, though it can take multiple forms simultaneously. We've been tracking it for some time. Entity. It looked like there were 3 of them. A single consciousness with multiple projections. The infant form is one of its preferred manifestations. He gestured to a chair. "Please sit. You must be exhausted." I remained standing. "I want answers, real ones this time." Mr. Marrow studied me for a long moment. "Very well. The Nordstrom Institute was established to research quantum reality, specifically, the theoretical boundaries between dimensions." Theoretical. No longer theoretical. He straightened his tie. "Our experiments were more successful than anticipated. We created small breaches between our reality and others. Most closed naturally, but some remained, allowing entities to occasionally slip through. Like the things that just tried to kill me. Like whatever killed Dr. Knox." "Precisely. Dr. Knox encountered the same entity in Lab 7B. Unfortunately, he did not follow protocol. He approached it, allowed it close enough to affect his neurological functions. I thought back to the security footage, how Dr. Knox seemed to be talking to someone who wasn't there. It made him see things. It projected images directly into his mind, causing a fatal hemorrhage. The entity feeds on neural activity, essentially consuming consciousness itself. And you didn't think to mention any of this when you hired me?" Mr. Marrow's expression remained impassive. "Would you have accepted the position if I had?" "No." "Then you understand our recruitment dilemma." He produced an envelope from his jacket. "Your new contract, reflecting the increased compensation. $50 per hour with a $5,000 bonus upon completion of the month." I stared at him. "After what just happened, you think I want to stay?" "I think you need the money for your mother's treatments, and I know we need someone with your particular resilience." He placed the envelope on the desk. "The entity was attracted to you specifically, Ms. Zhao. Your presence acted as a lure, keeping it contained in the lobby rather than roaming the facility. That makes you extremely valuable to our containment efforts." "You're using me as bait," I said, the realization making me feel ill. "I prefer to think of it as utilizing your natural compatibility with our research requirements." He gestured to the salt circle. "The protocols work when followed correctly. You are in no danger as long as you adhere to them. And if I refuse? Then we accept your resignation and seek another candidate." His tone made it clear what typically happened to those replacements. The envelope sat on the desk between us. Inside was enough money to give Mom a fighting chance, to give us both breathing room we hadn't had in years. "1 month, I said finally. "Not a day more." "Acceptable." Mr. Marrow nodded once. "Security will escort you home. Return tonight at the usual time." As I gathered my belongings, exhaustion making my movements clumsy, I glanced at the vents where the creatures had emerged. They looked ordinary now, just metal grates over dark spaces. But I knew better. Something was in the walls, just as Dr. Knox had warned. And for the next 3 weeks, I would be sitting alone in a building full of holes in reality with only a circle of salt between me and whatever might crawl through. With 1 week left in my contract, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something crucial about the Nordstrom Institute. The $50 hourly wage had helped Mom start a promising new treatment, but the cost was my peace of mind. Every night I spent inside those walls felt like tempting fate, especially after what happened to Dr. Knox. I arrived at the public library downtown 3 hours before my shift was scheduled to begin. The main branch had computers with access to newspaper archives and public records, resources I needed to understand what I'd gotten myself into. Just doing some research for a paper, I told the librarian who showed me to a terminal. I started with a simple search, Nordstrom Institute for Advanced Research. The results were sparse. A few mentions in scientific journals about grants received, vague descriptions of quantum research initiatives, and a handful of press releases announcing new hires. Nothing about dimensional breaches or entities from other realities. Then I tried a different approach. I searched for missing persons in the area over the past year, focusing on people who might have worked night shifts. 3 names appeared in separate articles: Diane Mercer, James Holloway, and Tara Nguyen. Diane had disappeared 7 months ago. Her car was found in the parking lot of her workplace, but the article didn't specify where she worked. James vanished 4 months later, last seen leaving his apartment for a new night job he'd been excited about. Tara's disappearance was more recent, just 2 months ago. Her roommate reported she never returned from her overnight shift. My fingers trembled as I clicked through to Tara's social media profile, still active, though abandoned. Her last post was a complaint about having to memorize weird rules for her new job. A comment from a friend asked where she was working, but Tara never replied. I searched for combinations of their names with the Nordstrom Institute. Nothing direct appeared, but a local news blog mentioned Diane's car being found near the research park on Westlake Drive, the same area as the Institute. Next, I looked into Mr. Merrow himself. The Institute's website listed him as founder and director with a biography so vague it could have described anyone. Degrees from prestigious universities. Previous work in advanced governmental research. Publications in classified journals. A deeper search revealed he had worked at DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, for 15 years before founding the Nordstrom Institute. The transition happened abruptly 5 years ago, with no explanation for why he left government work to start a private research facility. I found a photo from a DARPA conference dated 6 years ago. Mr. Merrow stood in a group of scientists, his posture as rigid as ever, his smile as empty, but something about the image caught my attention. I zoomed in on his face. His teeth looked normal. Not the too large, too numerous teeth that had disturbed me since our first meeting. Just ordinary human teeth. I printed everything I could find and tucked the papers into my bag. As I left the library, I checked the time, still 2 hours before my shift. On impulse, I drove to the county records office. The clerk looked bored as I requested property records for the Nordstrom Institute building. Research for a real estate class, I explained with a smile I didn't feel. The records showed the building was built 3 years ago, with permits filed by Nordstrom Research Holdings LLC. The company was registered to Oscar Merrow with no other officers listed. The land used to belong to the federal government, specifically, to a DARPA testing facility that had been shut down. I got to the Institute 15 minutes before midnight with dozens of questions running through my head. The regular security guards checked my ID and nodded as they let me through. The night shift started normally for the first hour. I did my rounds, checked the security feeds, and wrote down the environmental readings like I was supposed to. But tonight, I had something else in mind. At exactly 1:17 a.m., the same time I'd gotten that first call from whatever was pretending to be my grandmother, I looked right into camera 4. The handbook specifically said not to do this. I stared into the lens, counting seconds, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. I tried camera 2, then camera 7, looking straight at each one. Still nothing. Either the rule was pointless, or whatever the cameras did wasn't obvious right away. Then I spotted it. A small red light had turned on near the wall behind the reception desk, next to what I thought was a thermostat. I walked up to it slowly. It wasn't a thermostat at all, but a small panel with a fingerprint reader. I paused only for a second before pressing my thumb against it. The panel beeped, and a chunk of wall slid open, revealing a narrow hallway I'd never seen before. I felt my pulse quicken as I stepped inside. The hallway had blue lights running along the floor. It ended at a heavy metal door with another fingerprint reader. I pressed my thumb against it, and it clicked open. The room on the other side looked nothing like the clean, simple style of the rest of the institute. It was like a control center from a movie, rows of computers, several large screens on the walls, and in the middle, a 3D display showing what looked like the building's layout. But what unnerved me were the screens. Each showed a different view of the reception area, my reception area. And in each one, I could see myself. Except it wasn't exactly me. On one screen, my hair was shorter. On another, I wore glasses I didn't own. On a third, I was wearing different clothes than what I had on. I went to the nearest computer. Files were open, like someone had been working there recently. The top document was called Quantum Viewer Calibration Protocol. I read through it quickly, feeling colder with each paragraph. The document explained how the quantum viewers let them watch parallel dimensional variants of the same physical space. The viewers were set up to focus on anchor subjects, people whose patterns were especially stable across multiple realities. Night receptionists. We were the anchors. Another file caught my attention, containment protocols for dimensional breaches. I opened it, my throat tightening as I read. The presence of a quantum anchor subject stabilizes localized reality, preventing uncontrolled breach expansion. Each anchor must remain within designated areas during critical hours, midnight to 6 a.m., when dimensional thinning is most pronounced. Behavioral protocols have been established to prevent anchor subjects from inadvertently attracting or enabling entity transit. The behavioral protocols. The handbook rules. I clicked through more files, finding detailed notes on each rule and why it existed. Rule 4. Never look directly at security cameras. Cameras utilize quantum lensing technology that can create feedback loops when observed by an anchor subject, potentially opening microbreaches. Rule 7. If lights flicker more than 3 times in succession, move immediately to basement storage. Light fluctuations indicate imminent breach formation. Basement storage contains emergency stabilization field. Rule 12. Hang up immediately if caller claims to be your grandmother. Entities have demonstrated ability to access anchor subjects' memories, particularly focusing on deceased loved ones for emotional manipulation. Every bizarre rule had a purpose, not to protect me, but to maintain the stability of whatever experiments they were conducting. I wasn't being protected from outside threats. I was being used to contain them. A file labeled Subject Compatibility Ratings showed a list of names with numerical scores. My name was at the top with a 97% rating. Below mine were other names, including Diane Mercer, 84%, James Holloway, 79%, and Tarang Gwyn, 91%. The 3 missing night receptionists. A note under Tara's name read, Subject lost during Entity Incursion Event 17. Replacement required. Lost. Not quit, not fired. Lost. I clicked on Entity Incursion Event 17 and found a security log dated 2 months ago, when Tara disappeared. The log described an entity breaching containment after the subject deviated from protocol by responding to an auditory lure. The entity had taken Tara's form and escaped into the facility. The real Tara was listed as unrecoverable. An alarm suddenly blared through the room. Red lights flashed as a computerized voice announced, Security breach detected. Unauthorized access to Control Center Alpha. Lockdown initiated. I had to get out. I ran to the door, but it had already sealed shut. The fingerprint reader was dead, its screen dark. Emergency protocols activated, the computerized voice continued. Security team en route. Estimated arrival, 4 minutes. 4 minutes. I looked around quickly for another exit, but there wasn't one. My only choice was to block the door and try to learn as much as possible before they showed up. I pulled a heavy chair to the door and stuck it under the handle. It wouldn't last long, but it might give me a few extra minutes. Then I went back to the computer and started downloading files onto a USB drive I found in a drawer. The screen showing different versions of me suddenly flickered. One after another, they switched to security camera feeds from around the building. I watched armed guards rushing through hallways, headed straight for me. Then another person appeared on the main entrance feed. Mr. Marrow walked calmly through the lobby, talking on a phone. When he passed under a light, something strange happened to his face. It glitched out for a second, like bad TV reception. For a split second, his features seemed to change, showing something sharp and inhuman underneath. It happened again when he entered the east hallway. This time, I got a better look at what was under the human disguise, a face with too many angles, made up of flat surfaces that bounced light in ways that didn't make sense. His teeth had always bothered me. Too big, too many. They'd felt off from our first meeting because deep down, I'd known they weren't really teeth. They were part of something else completely, something wearing a human face like a mask that didn't fit right. Then it hit me. Mr. Marrow wasn't human. He was one of them, something from another dimension. And he wasn't trying to keep other things out. He was using us to bring them in. I looked at the security monitors and saw Mr. Marrow's face glitch again as he walked quickly down the hallway. Something was wrong with his face. Underneath, it looked crystalline and not human. My hand shook as I turned back to the computer, knowing I only had a few minutes before he got to me. The USB drive's light flashed while copying files, but it wasn't fast enough. I needed answers right away. I clicked through folders quickly, looking for anything that might explain what was going on. I noticed a folder called Founder and clicked on it immediately. Inside, I found photos and documents about Oscar Nordstrom, who actually founded the institute. He didn't look anything like Mr. Marrow. He was shorter, chubbier, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. His bio said he was a prominent physicist who worked on quantum mechanics and made a major discovery about dimensions 5 years ago, the same time Marrow suddenly quit DARPA. I opened a video from 5 years ago. It showed a lab with unfamiliar equipment. Oscar Nordstrom stood in front of what looked like a doorway made of light, talking excitedly into a recorder, Test 47 of the quantum aperture. Previous tests have confirmed stable pathway formation, but today we're attempting first physical transit of an inanimate object. He placed a small metal sphere on a mechanical arm that extended toward the light. As the sphere touched the shimmering surface, the aperture pulsed. The sphere disappeared. "Transit successful," Nordstrom exclaimed. "Now for retrieval." He typed commands into a console. The aperture flickered, then expanded suddenly. Nordstrom backed away, alarm replacing excitement on his face. "Something's wrong. The aperture is becoming unstable. Readings indicate." The video cut to static for several seconds. When the image returned, the laboratory was in chaos. Equipment sparked and smoked. The aperture had grown, its light now harsh and painful to look at, and something was coming through. The camera caught only glimpses, a tall, angular form composed of faceted surfaces that seemed to bend light around them. Nordstrom screamed as the entity reached for him with limbs that moved in impossible ways. Then the video ended. My stomach lurched as I realized what I was seeing. The real Oscar Nordstrom had opened a doorway to another dimension, and something had come through. Something that had taken his place. Mr. Marrow wasn't working to contain breaches between dimensions. He was the breach. I clicked through more files, finding personnel records that showed a complete staff turnover in the weeks following Nordstrom's accident. The official story was that he had died in a lab explosion and his colleague Oscar Marrow had taken over the institute. No one had questioned it. Another folder contained detailed analyses of night receptionists, dozens of them over the past 5 years. Each file included psychological profiles, family connections, financial situations, and vulnerability assessments. My file was open in another window with notes about my mother's illness and my exceptional desperation threshold. They hadn't hired me for my qualifications. They'd hired me because I was too desperate to quit no matter what happened. A document titled, Harvesting Protocol, made my blood run cold. It detailed how the entities Mr. Marrow brought through the breaches were captured and processed in a facility beneath the Institute. The purpose was listed as essence extraction for dimensional stabilization. He wasn't just bringing them through. He was feeding on them. The alarm continued to blare as I searched for anything that might help me escape. A file labeled Emergency Protocols contained instructions for various scenarios, including containment failure and entity incursion. I clicked on Dimensional Stabilizer Override, hoping it might offer a way out. The document explained that the Institute was built on a network of quantum stabilizers that maintained the integrity of our dimension against incursions. These stabilizers could be disabled from the control room in case of catastrophic breach, allowing for total dimensional reset. A plan formed in my mind, desperate and dangerous, but possibly my only chance. If I disabled the stabilizers, the carefully maintained boundaries between dimensions would fluctuate. Mr. Marrow would lose control of whatever he was doing here. I found the stabilizer controls on a separate terminal. They required an authorization code, but a quick search through Nordstrom's personal files revealed his original password, his wife's birthday followed by his dog's name. I entered it, praying it hadn't been changed. The screen flashed green, Stabilizer Override Authorized. Warning, disabling stabilizers will result in dimensional instability. Proceed. I clicked yes. Just as pounding began on the control room door. Ms. Zhao. Mr. Marrow's voice came through, eerily calm despite the situation. Open this door immediately. You don't understand what you're doing. I understand exactly what I'm doing, I muttered, watching as the stabilizer status indicators changed from green to red one by one. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The air in the room seemed to thicken, becoming jelly-like. Colors changed, too bright, then too dull. The walls seemed to move in and out. The pounding on the door stopped. Then a voice that was no longer trying to sound human spoke, its tones overlapping like multiple people talking at once. You have made a grave error. The stabilizers were not just containing other entities. They were containing me. The door exploded inward, the metal twisting as if made of paper. The chair I'd used as a barricade flew across the room, narrowly missing my head. Mr. Marrow, or what had been pretending to be Mr. Marrow, stood in the doorway. His human disguise was failing completely now. His suit rippled as the thing beneath it shifted and grew. His face stretched and broke apart, revealing skin that looked like shiny black glass with countless tiny facets. Where his arms should have been, multiple limbs unfolded, each ending in points that looked sharp enough to cut through steel. What you see is merely what your mind can process, the entity said, its voice vibrating through my bones rather than my ears. My true form would drive you mad. I backed away until I hit the computer console. You killed Oscar Nordstrom. You took his place. I improved upon his work. The entity moved into the room, its movements jerky yet fluid, like stop-motion animation played too fast. He opened the door, but he had no vision for what lay beyond it. I have brought order to chaos, by kidnapping people like me, by feeding on other entities. Sustenance is necessary for adaptation. Your kind makes excellent anchors. Your consciousness helps me maintain this form in your reality. It tilted what passed for its head. You were the best anchor we've found. Your desperation made you perfect. The room continued to warp around us. On the monitors, I could see similar effects throughout the building, corridors stretching impossibly long, then compressing to half their size. Furniture melting into the floor, then reconstituting in different forms. Security guards frozen in mid-motion as time itself became unstable. I needed to act fast before reality collapsed completely. I turned back to the terminal and accessed the final emergency protocol, quantum loop containment. That will trap you as well, the entity warned, moving closer. Better trap than whatever you had planned for me. I entered the activation sequence. The air crackled with energy as a field of blue light expanded from the ceiling, enclosing both of us. Outside the field, time seemed to slow to a crawl. Inside, the entity and I existed in a bubble of normal time, a quantum loop separated from the rest of reality. You've doomed us both, it said, its faceted surface reflecting the blue light in hypnotic patterns. When the reset completes, this entire facility will be purged from this dimension, unless we stabilize it first. I pointed to the monitor showing the dimensional stabilizer controls. I can reactivate them remotely, but only if all breaches are sealed, including you. It made a sound like breaking glass, laughter, I realized with a shudder. You offer me a deal. How human. Safe passage back to your dimension in exchange for sealing the breaches permanently. I tried to keep my voice steady despite my terror. Otherwise, we both get erased when the reset completes. The thing shifted again, becoming slightly smaller. You cannot comprehend what I am, what I have accomplished here. I know enough. You've been capturing entities from other dimensions, extracting something from them to maintain your presence here. You've been using people like me as bait, as anchors. And when we outlive our usefulness, we disappear. The monitors showed reality continuing to deteriorate throughout the facility. Walls phased in and out of existence. Gravity reversed in some areas, sending furniture floating toward the ceiling. In one corridor, a security guard aged decades in seconds, then reverted to a child, then back to an adult. The reset will complete in 5 minutes, I said, checking the countdown on the screen. Decide now. The entity was silent for a long moment, its faceted surface cycling through colors I couldn't name. Finally, it spoke, I accept your terms. I will return to my dimension and seal the breaches. I accessed the dimensional controls and initiated the sequence Nordstrom had created for opening portals. A glowing doorway like the one from the video materialized at the far end of the control room. You first, I said, not trusting the entity to keep its word if I gave it control too soon. It moved toward the opening, its form stretching as it approached the portal from which it had come. Just before passing through, it turned back to look at me, its surface shifting to resemble a human face, Mr. Marrow's face. You are more valuable than you know, Emily Zhao. In all the dimensions we've explored, your quantum signature is unique. We will find you again. Not if I close the door for good. I activated the final sequence, transferring control of the stabilizers to the terminal nearest the aperture. The entity reached the controls and began repairing the fractures. On the monitors, I watched as things returned to normal throughout the facility, walls becoming solid again, gravity normalizing, time resuming its proper flow. As the last breach sealed, the entity stepped through the doorway. Its final words hung in the air as the portal closed, doors swing both ways. The quantum loop dissolved as the reset completed. The blue field faded, and I found myself standing alone in the control room. The monitors showed a completely normal research facility, no spatial distortions, no time anomalies, no faceted entities stalking the halls. I checked the computer logs. All traces of dimensional research had been wiped clean, replaced with ordinary scientific data. It was as if the breaches had never existed. I made my way back to the reception desk, half expecting to encounter guards or some other obstacle, but the building was quiet, the corridors empty. When I reached the lobby, dawn was breaking outside the glass doors. My shift was over. The night receptionist's handbook still sat on my desk. I picked it up, flipping through pages that now contained only standard security procedures. No salt circles, no protocols for flickering lights or phantom phone calls. But when I turned to the back cover, I found a single line of text that hadn't been there before: doors swing both ways. I tucked the handbook into my bag, insurance in case Mr. Marrow ever found his way back. When the day shift arrived at 8 a.m., I handed in my resignation. The daytime receptionist looked confused when I mentioned Mr. Marrow. The director is Dr. Nordstrom. Has been since the institute opened. I walked out into the morning sunlight, the handbook heavy in my bag. The Nordstrom Institute looked like any other research building now, glass and steel shining in the early light, with no sign of the strange occurrences that had happened there. But I knew better. And I'd be keeping an eye out in case those dimensional problems ever started up again.